We are getting a clearer picture of how Americans are feeling about President Trump and his economic policy now 12 weeks into his second term. CNN chief data analyst Harry Inton is here to run the numbers. Hello, Harry. Happy Sunday to you.
You as well.
Okay, so where are we with Americans and how they're viewing the economy?
Yeah, so a CBS News YouGov poll came out earlier today, and I will just say, I'll put it in stark terms, I believe this is the worst poll that Donald Trump has received in his second term, and we can go through it, Jessica. Let's talk about the economy, right? Think the economy is...
We're going to be taking a look at, in this one, at some of Donald Trump's poll numbers. People mostly voted for Trump, thinking that he was going to improve the economy on day one. But we're going to look at these poll numbers to see where the American people are at and how much they're going to be able to trust him going into the future. We'll get back to Harry later, but let's see what Rachel Maddow and her take is on this.
Yeah. How does the American people like all of this? How does the American population feel about how things are turning out with Donald Trump being back in the White House, given that this is sort of the daily news now? New polling from Gallup just out today shows that there is no issue on which the American people like what Trump is doing. His disapproval ratings are higher than his approval ratings on everything. He is 18 points underwater on his handling of the economy. He is 19 points underwater on his relations with Russia. He's underwater on his handling of the federal budget, on energy policy, on foreign affairs, on the Ukraine war, on the environment, on even his relations with the dreaded news media. He is underwater on every single thing. New polling in the great state of Texas today shows that Trump's favorability rating in Texas has dropped 15 points since the election in November. He is now underwater, specifically in Texas, and dropping like a stone. Today, Donald Trump pulled the nomination of Congresswoman Elise Stefanik to be his new ambassador to the United Nations. So congratulations to the United Nations. But Trump admitted the reason why he pulled her nomination. He said the reason he pulled her nomination is because they don't want her to leave her seat in the House because the Republican majority is so thin. Now, if Elise Stefanik had left her seat in the House and become UN ambassador, which was the original plan, they would just hold an election to put somebody else in that seat, right? If another Republican was going to replace her in the House, of course, it wouldn't affect the size of their majority at all. But you want to know why they pulled that nomination today? They pulled that nomination today, clearly, because they were worried that another Republican would not replace Elise Stefanik, that if they had to hold an election for that seat, they were worried they were going to lose it and that a Democrat was going to flip that seat. Elise Stefanik won that seat in November by 24 points. 24 points. Right now, with what Trump is doing as president, right now with how the Republicans are performing with Trump as president, right now, 24 points is not a comfortable enough margin for Republicans, given how hard the country is swinging back against them. 24 points in November looks like it might be a blue seat right about now. The real political leaders of this country are the people who are willing to get up in the morning and go do something. They're doing it. And in many ways, they are winning.
These poll numbers are not good. Neither are they for Republican House members and some Senate seats. This is what we're going to need come the midterms next year to take back the House and the Senate so we can get this country back on track. I wonder how some people who voted for Donald Trump in November, voting for egg prices and the economy, jobs and everything, how you feeling right now? Because we gave you a better choice than what we're getting out of this guy in the White House. We tried to warn you that he was all about himself and his billionaire friends. Now we're all seeing it. And I hate to say it, but we're going to suffer under this presidency. All right, let's keep going.
Welcome back. We are watching the markets on this Monday after a shift in tariff policy by President Trump. He said some electronics like smartphones and laptops will be excluded from his 145% levy on China. Here's where the markets stand right now. Here's what things are looking like. It's up, by 156 points. Our latest CBS news polls shows most Americans are worried about the impact of tariffs on the prices we pay. So here's CBS News Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, with a breakdown of that new poll.
In our CBS News polling, when we look at how Americans are gauging the impact of Donald Trump's trade and tariff policies after a tumultuous week on Wall Street, a lot of it comes down to what they see as the goals and what they see as the time frame for judging it. Now, here's what I mean. In the immediate, a lot of Americans think that tariffs are going to raise prices. You see this big 3/4 who say it's going to do that at least in the short term, and plenty think it's that in the long term too. Well, Americans are sensitive to that because for years they've been telling us that inflation and prices are top concerns for them. And then there's this movement we see in more Americans saying that they think the president's policies are making them financially worse off. It's not just about that increase, but think about expectations, too. At the start of the president's term, a lot more Americans said that they thought the president's policies would make them financially better off. So that's a contrast as well. But let's talk about the time frame that the Republicans, the president's political base, is giving for this, because it's much longer than many others in the public. You see, Republicans saying it's going to take at least a few months, if not a year or longer, to gauge whether it has an effect. So that patience, then, where do they think it's going to pay off? They think it's going to pay off in manufacturing jobs. Here's the partisan splits on that, and you see 85% of Republicans think eventually those policies are going to add jobs. And this, for most folks, including for many Republicans, they believe that the president is using trade and tariff policy now as negotiations, but will remove, they believe, the tariffs later rather than keep them on permanently. So that's how both the goals and the time frame of judging all this plays out.
Using tariffs as a negotiating tactic. Most people may not know this, but the importer pays the tariff. So if you and me were bringing in product from China at $2,000, if you got 100% tariff on that product, when it hits the port here in customs in the United States, we pay that. We're not going to eat it as a business. We're going to pass it on to the consumer. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had a better plan. They had incentives to bring back manufacturing, and we started seeing EV manufacturers making deals to start building factories over here. The chip makers started making deals to try and start making their chips over here. So Donald Trump and his administration and the Republicans are going about this all the wrong way. This is why we're going to see higher prices. Remember, Kamala was telling you we're going to have a $2,400 up to $4,000 tax on every American. This is what she was talking about with these tariffs. They're coming and things are going to get worse. I hope that people realize what they've done and give the House and the Senate back to the Democrats in 2026 in the midterm elections. Let's continue.
We are getting a clearer picture of how Americans are feeling about President Trump and his economic policy now 12 weeks into his second term. CNN chief data analyst Harry Inton is here to run the numbers. Hello, Harry. Happy Sunday to you.
You as well.
Okay, so where are we with Americans and how they're viewing the economy?
Yeah, so a CBS News YouGov poll came out earlier today, and I will just say, I'll put it in stark terms, I believe this is the worst poll that Donald Trump has received in his second term, and we can go through it, Jessica. Let's talk about the economy, right? Think the economy is getting worse. Back in November, it was 42% of Americans. You don't have to be a genius to follow this timeline. By February, it was 49%, March, 51%. Look at where we are now, 53%. The clear majority of Americans think the economy is getting worse, and that number is rising. When Trump, of course, won that second term, it was 42%. Now we're up 11 points. The clear majority, 53%. This poll and this number in particular is no bueno for the President of the United States, Jessica.
And who are they blaming for what they are seeing as an economic downturn?
Yeah, okay. So, obviously, you had Joe Biden before you had Donald Trump. And, of course, Donald Trump would say, you know, Joe Biden left us in a horrible state and I have to help dig us out of it. All right, so let's take a look here. More responsible for the state of the economy or the economic state. In March, CBS News asked about inflation, and 38% said it was Joe Biden who was more responsible, compared to 34% who said Donald Trump. Let's jump forward to now, in the month of April. Look at this number. 54% of Americans say that Donald Trump is more to blame for the state of the economy than Joe Biden. Joe Biden's number has fallen from 38% to 21%. Donald Trump may try to blame Joe Biden for this, and maybe that was working a month ago in the month of March. But since the tariff war has begun, it's not working anymore. Americans are not buying what Donald Trump is selling them. They believe, the clear majority, 54%, that Donald Trump is more to blame for the state of the economy at this point than Joe Biden is, Jessica.
That is interesting to see how that evolves just in the last month, really.
Yeah.
How are they viewing tariffs?
Yeah. Okay. So obviously the big thing when it comes to the state of the economy right now for Donald Trump is tariffs. So let's take a look here. All right. The tariff plan, new tariffs on importing goods, oppose versus favor. You go back to January. Look at this. 48% said they favored these new tariffs, these Donald Trump tariffs, compared to 46% who opposed. Look at where we are now in the CBS News YouGov poll. A switcheroo, Jessica, a switcheroo. The clear majority, 58% of Americans oppose these new tariffs compared to just 42% who favor them. Again, this is part of the picture that we've seen throughout this presentation, right, Jessica? More and more people are turning against Donald Trump. Their views of the economy are getting worse. They are holding Donald Trump responsible. And when it comes to his signature issue, so far in his second term, tariffs, I mean, my goodness gracious, that trend line is ridiculously awful for Trump. The opposition number from 46 to 58 and the favor from 48 to 42. Americans have switched on a dime on the economy, on Donald Trump, in large part because of the tariffs, which they increasingly do not like.
And what's the biggest problem with Trump's plan for these people?
Well, I think it's the biggest problem that you hear our analysts say all the time is they don't know what the heck Donald Trump is doing. It's his approach. I mean, take a look here. Trump's approach to tariffs and trade, that is the way he's going about it. Just 37% of Americans like it. Look at this number. 63%, nearly two-thirds dislike it. Among independents, Jessica, it's just 28% of independents who like the way that Donald Trump is approaching tariffs and trade. And that's not much of a surprise because one day Donald Trump is saying one thing, the next day he's saying another. One day someone from his administration saying one thing, the next day that same exact person saying another. The message, simply put, is unclear, and it's the approach more than anything else, Jessica Dean, that the folks in the American public dislike about Donald Trump and his way that he's going about the tariffs and trade policy of the second Trump administration.
Very interesting. And then overall, how does this affect his approval rating?
Yeah, okay, so we talk about the economy, right? But does the economy, the way people feel about the economy, equal the way they feel about Donald Trump overall? Because if it doesn't, if these two paths don't cross, then these numbers don't mean anything.
Right.
But let's take a look right here. Donald Trump's net approval rating. In early February, according to CBS News, look at that, it was +6. Late February, +2. March, 0, even approval, disapproval. Look at where we are now, -6 points. He's underwater for the first time in the CBS News YouGov poll, at least in his second term. Again, it's the trend line that's so important here, and the trend line and the American people are turning against Donald Trump. And that's why I said at the beginning, Jessica, that this, in my mind, is the worst poll that Trump has received in his second term so far.
All right, Harry Enton, as always, with the numbers there. Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, just remember Donald Trump bankrupted 6 companies. A casino was one of them. The house always wins with the casino. How do you bankrupt a casino? So this is where we are. Some of you guys voted for him. I don't understand why. We tried to tell you guys that he was not going to be a good president. He was not going to be good for this economy. Joe Biden was a steady hand. The economy rebounded from the COVID crisis under Joe Biden. We had jobs. The stock market was doing really well. He handed Trump a really good economy. I know people saying that they wasn't feeling it, but guess what? Look at what you're feeling right now. And who's to say these tariffs are not really set in place yet? Imagine how bad it could get. Let's just hope things will get better. But from the way things are looking, we made the wrong choice by electing Donald Trump and the Republicans. Got to do what we have to do next year in 2026 to take back this House and the Senate to get this country back on track, guys. I thank you for listening to me. Thank you for giving me a chance to bring some news to you, and I'm going to continue going at it. I'm not going to let up. I'm going to amplify this voice over this next year, and I will be here bringing the news to you daily about these midterms and how we can take back the House and the Senate. So once again, I thank you guys for liking and subscribing and sharing with your friends. See you on the next one. I ask you guys to like and subscribe and share with your